condition of the world today. I can't help but get down on my knees and pray that we will stay. I stand for love. 'Cause if you walk around the alleyway, you see the homeless people with no place to stay. So we must pray. I stand for love.
Welcome to the 100th Monkey Radio with Tom and Ramon. We are recording this on January 5th of 2015. And if you guys haven't had a chance to check out the New Year's show we did with Amelia last week, I would strongly urge you to go over and listen to that show. As you guys know, that has become a New Year's tradition with us for 4 years running now that we have had Amelia on, and it was just a very lighthearted and enlightening show all the way around. So I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I think you guys would too. So Ramon, what's going on, man? You're now up in New York?
Yeah, I started off on your side of the world in Seattle, then went down to see you, Portland, Orlando, and now I'm in New York City. So just taking it easy. Got to visit some family yesterday, and for everybody out there, I know a lot of people go through this where you love your family, but it's just certain topics you try to stay away from, but they always bring it up, and especially some of what we would call the more ignorant kind of topics, where it's a very ignorant point of view, but you try to do the best you can. That's why I only come to visit you once a year.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's really great. Actually, I'm not promoting it, if you guys don't like those things, but I got a new tattoo, and guess what I tattooed, Tom?
You didn't tattoo Tom's my buddy, did you?
No, I put Tom's my best friend.
Oh, jeez.
And then underneath I put, I hope Scott Jones would like me too.
Well, I'm glad I made the postscript at least.
So what'd you tattoo, Ramon?
I actually got a spaceship.
Really?
You know how we're always saying we want a spaceship so we can go and interview extraterrestrials from other
Did you do a classic disc?
Yeah, classic disc is little purple. I'll probably put it up on the website and stuff like that. Not promoting tattoos. If that's not your thing, that's not your thing. But I'm always saying I wanted a spaceship, so I got one.
There you go. All right. You're going to have to buy that one over here for lunch.
Exactly.
Right.
So we have this amazing guest, and I love the people who are, before you bring them in, Tom, I just love the people who are bold enough to even to look at this topic lightly. But this gentleman we have here didn't look at it lightly. Really, push forward the envelope on the whole extraterrestrial and what should we do, and we need to talk about this openly and without criticism. And I'm glad people like this are really pushing it and making headway. So thanks to the gentlemen like we will have on the show today, we're at where we're at, and we don't really notice and say thank you to these people. So I want to say thank you to everybody out there who's sacrificing, because it's not, there's dangers to it and losing your career and all sorts of things. So thank you for being very courageous.
Yeah, yes, so, absolutely.
Tom.
You're here. Dr. C.B. Scott Jones has investigated UFO enigma for over 60 years, starting at the beginning of his 30-year Navy career as a carrier jet fighter pilot, and including 15 years in naval intelligence with assignments in Europe, India, and Washington, D.C. He briefed the President's Scientific Advisory Committee and Congressional Armed Services Committee on scientific and technical intelligence. Because of his intelligence experience, he was hired by Senator Claiborne Pell, chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, as a special assistant with responsibilities to visit global institutes and laboratories involved in consciousness research as it was linked to UFO and ET phenomena. This 6-year assignment was particularly fruitful in repeated visits to China and Russia. Dr. Lawrence Rockefeller hired him after his Capitol Hill work to design a strategy to get the Clinton administration to review the policy of silence and denial on UFOs that it had inherited from previous administrations. A number of meetings with the president's science advisor established that Clinton very likely had not been briefed on this subject. The capstone to his work with Mr. Rockefeller was the May 1995 When Cosmic Cultures Meet conference held in Washington, D.C. Recognizing the link between peace, stability, and the challenges and opportunities that disclosure of our ancient and modern history of contact with extraterrestrial cultures will raise, he designed Plan C. The first iteration of Plan C was to recruit global universities to research and write white papers on the consequences of disclosure to their countries and cultures. Academia showed a face of fear to this opportunity. The feedback was that without political cover, this would be a third rail event for them. Plan C has been modified, and a briefing Cosmic Humanity Disclosures, Challenges, and Opportunities is being presented to global elite groups in order to develop political cover for academia to get into the game, please. This briefing was well received, and it was presented to audiences in India. A current major program is the Outer Space Security and Development Treaty of 2014. Cosmic cultures are full parties to this treaty. It is ready to be signed by nations of the world and will ban all classes of space-based weapons. And details of the treaty, we have a link on the show page here that you guys can check out. It's www.peaceinspacetreaty.com. And Dr. Jones's collection of speeches on ETs, UFOs, et cetera, the books that he's been published in and helped write are all on his website at www.peaceroom.com. And I want to give you a warm 100th monkey welcome to our show, Dr. Scott Jones.
I thank you, Tom and Ramon. I'm delighted to be here.
Yeah, we're really excited. Like I was saying in the beginning of the show, I'm so proud that there's people like you out there that are really pushing this envelope, and because I'm sure you're not in it for the money. So,
well, the good news. Let's get the good news out. That this has never been the Lone Ranger Act. I have colleagues globally who are just as energetic, and many of them much more than an 86-year-old, and dedicated to help in the transition that is inevitable and needed for survival of our civilization. There's a bunch of them, and you two are part of that team.
Yeah, and our numbers are growing by the day, too. I mean, as you know, Romano and I have commented several times on the growth in this field just since we started this show, and we're in our 5th year now. And the popularity of this subject and this topic and the importance of this topic is starting to sink into the masses. I mean, people are really starting to understand, hey, we're really not alone here. And if we're not alone here, then that means that there's somebody out there. And maybe all of this stuff that everybody's been talking about and all these clues that have been left here on this planet, maybe there's something to it. So it's all good news there. It's all good news there. Scott, I'd like to let's go back a little bit, and we'd like to give our listeners a little bit of an idea of who exactly they're talking to and what got them into the field that we're talking on tonight, which we're kind of going to surround this show tonight around the book that you did with Angela Thompson Smith, Voices from the Cosmos, which we had her on here a few months ago, and just a fascinating piece of work by both of you. And so what was it that actually got you started on the path of seeking outside of the third dimensional societal training?
Well, Tom, I didn't have any conscious memories as a young adult that I had any interest or certainly any involvement in this. Fairly typical, I think, for my generation. At that time, it just simply was not a subject that was discussed much, and not much written about it until after the 50s, when sightings were made, claims were made and denied about what those objects were in the air. In 1950, I was a young naval aviator, and the Korean War started, and I had read a little bit of literature on this and felt that maybe I also might spot something like a UFO in the air. So in addition to the rigors of combat, flying off a carrier, I made two tours in 1950 and 1952. And there were several significant things that happened on the tour that I never equated to, I didn't know what it was, so I couldn't equate it to anything, but it had nothing to do with UFOs. On one mission, I thought I saw something high above me, and I was at 36,000 feet in a jet fighter on a combat air patrol mission. And as we were recalled to return to the carrier, the strike flight had already called in and were in the landing. And we were above the task group. As I turned to do a split S down, I saw what I thought was a glint above me. So I just finished the rollout, looked around, and didn't see it again. And so I assumed it was simply a sunflare on the top of the cannon, and never mentioned it to anyone. But that may have been a sighting. I found out later from talking to other people, indeed some people on the ground during the Korean War, that they had seen UFOs. So the UFOs were paying attention, apparently, to what were going on. And I think it is fair to assume that they have paid attention to just about everything that has gone on, particularly areas of violence, anticipating what in fact has happened, a burgeoning of weapons of mass destruction, some with the capability of ending life on Earth. This is seriously considered a threat by the extraterrestrials that I am in contact with.
So during your missions there in Korea, there was and you flew F-86, is that correct?
I was there in 1950 and then another 8-month tour in 1952. Was that your question?
Oh no! What jet did you fly? Was it the F-86?
That was the first generation of jet fighters, the F-9F-2 Panther, a Grumman product, a beautiful blue bird, and I was one of the early ones in the Navy to get into jet aviation. We were a minority aboard the aircraft carrier. Most of them were props, the Corsair, and the heavy attack aircraft. only one squadron of jets. That's all the Navy had at that time. They managed to put one squadron aboard most of the aircraft carriers in the Pacific and in the Mediterranean. So it was the Panther was the first jet that I flew.
Yeah, the reason I'd heard an F-86 out in one of the interviews that you'd done with somebody, and I don't remember who it was, but that stuck in my mind when I heard it because I was Air Force also, and they had an F-86 on static display at Little Rock Air Force Base, and I remembered that plane. I was like, oh wow, I wonder if that was the one he flew.
It could have been. Actually, the F-86s, of course, were active in the Korean War. They were the premier jet fighter that the U.S. fielded. It was a generation beyond what we were flying off the carrier. The carriers at that time were World War II refitted with more powerful catapults and arresting gear to handle the heavier and faster landing jets that we did have. We couldn't go to the next generation because of the limitation of the World War II carriers. It took another generation and a huge battle in Congress to approve what now are the normal carriers that can handle jets with ease.
Right there. I mean, you put one of those old World War II carriers up against one of them that we have today, and it's like, tiny. It's like a quarter of the ship, you know. So, yeah, they're definitely something else today.
To actually go off a little bit, still on topic but off topic. Speaking of the Korean War, were you there during when China started coming in heavily after they crossed the border?
Oh yes, that was the main opposition, the Chinese forces and the Chinese MiGs that came over from China, and we rarely turned with them. They had 100-knot speed advantage and could accelerate much more rapidly than we could. But we held our own. The F-86s had most of the opportunities to fight the MiG-15s and had a very high advantage shoot-down rate. Even the Navy had a advantageous shoot-down rate for the few times that we turned with the F-15.
And because you were in such a situation where, you know, any second could be the last one, did that ever change your belief systems or what life is about? Because, I mean, you survived something that so many people didn't. So,
Well, Ramon, you have to remember how you felt about these issues when you were in your early 20s. I was 21. I was still a kid. I knew that I was invulnerable. Nothing could happen to me.
Right.
And I'm absolutely fearless to the point of stupidity. But I didn't know how close my guardian angel was to me, and saved my rear end a number of times, I am sure, because I lacked the experience, the skill, or the wits to get out of the messes that I was in. I did get help.
Yeah. So you recounted a story of a brief OBE while flying. Can you share that with us, please?
Yeah, that was a hoot, I'll tell you. First of all, the Navy didn't know how to use jets. We were the first ones into combat, and so and the most expensive bird, so they were trying to preserve us, I guess. And of course, that just made us nuts. We had to get into the battle. We were allowed to protect the carrier and the combat air patrols, but that didn't get us engaged with the enemy. And finally, we proved that we could do something over land, and so we soon got other missions. One mission was long-range, low-altitude armed reconnaissance drones. The other mission was that since we had 4 20-millimeter cannons in the nose of our jets, and every third round was a high explosive, it was a devastating field of impact. And so the toughest missions, of course, were by the props carrying the bombs that could destroy a lot of real estate and people. They were slower, of course, in all aspects. And so we convinced the admiral that if we would go in first as flak suppression, we could either knock out or intimidate a lot of the anti-aircraft fire on the ground and make it a bit safer for the props with the heavy bombs to complete their attacks. And so it was on one of these flak suppression missions over a very heavily defended target. And I've likened it to what knights of old used to do, where they would flip down their shield over the face and lower their lance and charge at another knight from the opposition, charging at him the same way. It was exactly the same thing. It was gun barrel to gun barrel. And these were, frankly, more than exciting missions. And this was going to be a tough one, and we knew it. So when I rolled into my attack, the anti-aircraft fire was blowing up all around me, and it was clear that they had picked me up on radar, and I was diving right into a stream of incoming anti-aircraft fire. Suddenly, time just slowed down. Now, the noise in battle that you hear, it gets pretty noisy. People ordering flights to do certain things, and when someone get hit, they hear mayday, 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 and so on. So there's a lot of racket. Well, all of that went into extreme low octaves. As you know, when you slow down a recording, a normal voice goes word here, and you can't really understand it. It's just rumbling. Well, that's what happened, what I was hearing. And what I could see were little black spots coming straight at me, and there would be a blossom of orange and red colors, and then white puffs would go out, and then little splinters would go out in a circle away from that. That was the slow motion effect of an aircraft shell exploding right in front of me. This happened twice. It was awesome. And I was looking at this from my shoulder, my left shoulder. As soon as I spotted my target and started to engage, we went back to real time. And I made my attack, fired my cannons and dropped it, shot a couple of rockets that we had, and our personal rockets, and got off target and flew back. Well, this was stunning. I had no idea what I'd experienced, but I made a very practical decision. I don't dare talk about this to anybody. If I did, and the flight surgeon heard about it, he would ground me.
Right.
For going nuts. And so I just kept this, and it was only after the war, with some close squadron mates, that I mentioned it to them, and they thought that was wonderful. Now, my assessment of that was that my higher self said, hey kid, this is going to be a tough one, but we're going to make it beautiful for you. So just relax and watch the show. And that's what I did. Just a second. So, what was really a perilous mission, it turned out to be a thing of beauty.
Wow. What an experience. Yeah, I can only imagine. Because I've had Well, here's a question for you, and we're probably putting the cart way in front of the horse here. But have you experienced out of body travel since then?
Oh yes, yeah. I am very comfortable out of body.
Ah, okay, great.
I went. I've taken training in this, and I'm a meditator. I meditate every day, and I'm very comfortable in out of states other than normal conscious state that I think I'm in right now. And out of bodies are not unfamiliar with.
Ah, fantastic. So, when was it in your life that you understood that it was along those same lines as an out-of-body experience that you had? Did you suspect something back in those days, or was it later on that you put two and two together and realized what had happened?
No, Tom, for years I was simply innocent of what the real world is. To me, it was very physical, and I struggled to understand that, and I had no clue at that point that the world that we speak about and we're depending upon for this communication is a minority of the reality.
Right. I agree 100% there. Yes. So there's one more story out of the Korean War era of your life that I would really like you to share with our listeners, because it really, I think it adds a remarkable aspect to your being and who you are, and one of the motivators, I think, and I've sensed that anyways, that it's been one of the motivators for the path that you've chosen, and that has to do with that. I think you know the mission that I'm talking about, the one where you saw the soldiers in white around the ox cart.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
But I got the answer to that later, years later. This was a long-range armed reconnaissance flight that led up to a high plateau. This was flown in a valley that had a road that was an important logistic road for support from China to North Korea. And so we looked at it quite frequently. During the daytime, we absolutely controlled the air, and things did not safely move on the ground. At nighttime was when the major logistic movements were made to get material down to the front lines to support that battle lines. But so you don't expect to see things that aren't unless they're chemical. When we became fairly skilled in spotting camouflage, and so we would shoot up a few things. When you suspect that an odd-looking haystack deserves a little probing, and you hit it and it burns as if there's oil in there that you have got a truck. And that didn't happen a lot, but it happened enough to make it worth the effort and to assure that there was nothing moving in the daytime. The end of that route for a road serpentine up a mountainside, actually a ridge of a high plateau, and then it was flat from that point on to the border of China. And that was our turnaround point to return to the carrier. And I'd flown the route before, I knew it well. So I pulled up over the plateau, expecting just to do a 180 and return to the USS Princeton. And I was shocked to see an ox cart on the road. And on either side of it were at least 20 troops in white uniforms, clearly military. You could see their rifles. And when they heard me, when I broached over the rim of the plateau, being disciplined, they bugged out to the deep trenches on either side of the road. Now was convinced, seeing that they were guarding something of military value, something in the ox cart. And so I flipped on my master ramen switch, nosed over, and fired off a couple hundred rounds. Of course, you watch your rounds, every third is a tracer. So as I watched it go towards the target, I realized just before it hit that there were civilians walking close to the cart. And on the cart was a red object, long object, body shape. And at that point, the rounds hit, and there was no more ox, no more civilians, no more cart, just simply blown to hell. Well, I felt bad immediately because I knew I had slaughtered innocents, which was not the target. And I speculated that it may, in fact, have been a funeral procession of some sort. Came back to the carrier. We debriefed to the air intelligence officer. You have to account for the rounds that you expended. Told him what I did. And I said, and unfortunately, I killed a number of innocents. And the chief of staff, a Navy captain, was listening to that briefing. And we had an admiral aboard. And he said, son, you're doing your job. And, and I said, it's a pretty crappy job today. And that bugged me, that you just stuff that. And I had to pay for that later on, years later on, when I was out of the Navy, that came back to haunt me, and I had to get help, professional help, because it was really making me dysfunction. This was a highly delayed post-traumatic stress phenomenon. Well, I'll just finish this story.
Please.
I became aware and knowledgeable of what Edgar Mitchell had set up when he came back from his moonwalk, the Institute of Noetic Sciences. The boss that I worked for at that time was Senator Claiborne Pell, and he was on the board of the Institute of Noetic Sciences. And I was friends of all the staff members, including the president. And they used me as a gopher when they would find somebody who they were interested in. Instead of putting their reputation on the line, they fearlessly asked if I would go check this person out. And I enjoyed doing that because I was learning some real world stuff. And one of them was a doctor in California, and he had reported that when he gave his patients options, either a deadening drug or hypnosis, before he started his dental procedure, those who were in hypnosis, in hypnotic trance, a few of them would start talking to him during the procedure. And it was not the voice of the person. The person was voicing, but it was clearly not that individual. Being a very smart guy, he looked into this, and he decided that this was an entity that had taken possession or was part of an outside part of that particular person. And so he invented what he called spirit releasement therapy. And they wanted me to check out Bill. And so I called Bill, identified myself, said, I'd like to experience what you're doing. And he said, well, come on out. If you have any truth problems, we can take care of that too. And I didn't. And so we met in his office, and he described what he had done, played some tapes of what he had taped, and they were very impressive. And he said, well, you know, Scott, if you leave here without experiencing some of this yourself, he said, do you think you have any entities in you? And I said, I have no idea. I have no reason to suspect that I do. And he said, well, have you ever been hypnotized? I said, oh, yeah, I'm a great subject for that. And so he put me down very quickly into a light trance. And he said very boldly, is there anyone in there? And I was surprised when I answered. My voice was yes, which is not usually an answer. I would probably say yes, sir. And Bill said, well, who are you? This is Bill Baldwin. And he said, have you been with Scott? How long have you been with Scott? And the voice said, for a very long time. Now, Bill intuited that this was someone who belonged there. And so he said, how is Scott doing? And I thought, well, why is this jackass asking these personal questions? And the voice said, he is doing well, but has much to learn. Okay, I couldn't argue against that. And then Bill let that go by, and I thought, well, I'm ready to come up. And he said, is there anyone else there? Long pause. And there a very soft, gentle, oriental sounding voice said, yes. And Bill said, and who are you? And he gave a oriental name. I didn't recognize it as being Korea, but it was. And Bill said, and how did you get where you are? And he said, I don't know. And Bill said, well, what do you remember? He said, I was walking with my family, with my grandfather, in the Knox School. And then suddenly everything changed. I don't know where I am. Well, you know, what I can add to that, and I told Bill when he brought me out, I was ashen. And he recognized that he had really touched a nerve. And he said, what does that mean to you, Scott? Then I told him the story of that attack and how I felt really lousy as I made a quick turn over what was left of the target and returned to the carrier. Didn't have time to go after the troops and fuel it. And I opened my heart, and that energy was sensed by this innocent young child that I had killed. And he came aboard. And he was there until Bill discovered him and said, well, there is a better place for you to be, where you look up. And Bill said that I moved my head as if I was looking up. And Bill said, what do you see? He said, I see a light in my grandfather. And Bill said, just reach up into the light. And I lost the imagery.
Wow.
And
wow.
Ramon and Tom, it was these experiences that I began to realize that, boy, I don't know half of what that is to live.
Right.
A small fraction. And I just dove into everything after that.
Wow, what an experience.
Yeah, that's absolutely amazing.
Yeah. So you know, I really kind of that helps me wrap my head around you know, how you came out of the military and the intelligence community into this field. You know, just that experience in itself would have you know, I see a great potential, and maybe there was a lot of subconscious work going on that helped guide you into this field. Also along the path of well, partly due to the experiences that you had to be able to set things right within yourself, and you know, yeah, good stuff. So,
well, Tom, I think you nailed it.
Yeah.
And And, later on I will answer a question you haven't asked. What was my first experience with the ETs? And I'll just drop one shoe. It was when I was 8 months old.
Wow. Okay, you're going to have to give me more than that.
Yeah, we'll have to drop the other shoe.
Okay. I met an extraordinary woman, Paula Underwood Spencer. She was an Iroquois, a clan mother of the Turtle Clan. Turtle singing. I've dropped her Native American name, but it'll come to me in a minute. But I was working for Senator Pell at this time. He had hired me because he heard of some unusual things that happened to me on an intelligence assignment in India. And I can't go too deep into that story. But in fact, what happened was for a period of a month and a half, I became a spontaneous remote viewer. And it was extraordinarily helpful in the work that I was doing there. Pell heard about that. And he invited me up. We met, established a personal relationship. One evening over at his house for dinner, he said, well, I have a number of things that I want to do. One of them is to hire someone who shares my interest in these odd areas, psychic area, who is willing to work with me and really find out what is going on. And I turned to him. I said, well, Senator, are you offering me a job? And he said, yes, I am. And I said, well, I'm finishing a contract with the government in intelligence with a think tank at that time. I said, but it'll be over in a month, and I will be delighted to work with you. And so that's how I joined Pell. And in that, it became somewhat notorious, and he took a bunch of razzing in the press. Everyone knew he had this peculiar interest in psychic phenomena. And the first thing I did was to suggest to him that we rename it. Let's call it an interest in consciousness. Same thing, different label.
Right.
So we did it, but that didn't call on anybody. They still called it the psychic one. And of course, I got wrapped for being a double dipper, being paid both my retirement Navy pay and also as employee of the government. Now that is an interesting thing that the president of the Senate, the vice president of the United States, has a legal authority to do that. And Pell just asked him if he would do it. That happened to be the first Bush. And they were friends, knew each other very well. And so I taught several grades of hell for that. But at any rate, since I was well known for what I was doing for Pell, I got a call from a young lady who said that she was a student at George Washington University and that she was the president of the psychology club, and asked if I would be willing to come and talk to him about what I was doing at Pell. And I said, certainly. I got my undergraduate at George Washington. So we set a date, and I went over and arrived about 15 minutes before the scheduled talk with the classmates. And we were standing in the hall. She looked over my shoulder behind me and said, oh, I invited my mother to come. I hope you don't mind. I said, well, no, not at all. So I turned around, and here came this woman, rapid rate coming, closing on both her daughter and me, head down, and she looked up and saw me and stopped dead in her track and just stared at me. And then just turned on her heel and walked away. And her daughter said, Mother, Mother, but Mother just kept going. And then, quite frankly, I checked my fly to see if I hadn't been insulted.
Right.
And no, that was all secure. Now it was time to go into the talk. And I started, and there were doors in the front of this was the classroom, and in the rear. And just before I started, Mother came in and sat down in the back row. And, you know, I work the crowd when they're talking. And every time I looked at her, man, she had a hard gaze at me. And, you know, and when I finished my talk and answered questions, she got up and left. And her daughter didn't know that her mother was there. And she apologized, and I said, no. I said, right. And then I was trying to think, my gosh, could that have been an old girlfriend I had in junior high school that I'd forgotten completely about? No, it didn't seem, that memory couldn't come up. That night at home, I told my wife when I went home about that. I said, that was somewhat of a weird experience. The phone rang. And it was Paula calling. And she said, I would like to meet with you and apologize. I'm seeing some call drops signal with you, Ramon. Are you offline now?
We're all good.
Okay?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. And she said, I would like to chat with you. And I said, well, that would be fine with me. And she said, can you come over tonight? I said, well, I don't know where you live. And she said, actually, not too far from me. She gave me the address, and I knew who it was. And so I said, okay, I'll be glad to. Well, when I got over there, Paula said, you really don't remember, do you? And I said, Paula, I don't know what I don't remember. But it was interesting. She asked, what tea would you like? She didn't ask if I drank tea or often coffee. So it was a clue that she knew something about. Indeed, she knew a lot about me. The shorten is, what she said was, I was disappointed that you didn't recognize me because we had seen each other so many times aboard the mothership. Now that blew my mind, you know. And I asked her for more details. She did. She said, you have been taken aboard by what people at that time called the abduction phenomenon. They had repeatedly taken DNA material, and you donated your seed, your semen, and without saying what that was for. So that was my first clue that there was another life that I was living that I had no knowledge of.
Wow. Wow, yeah, that would definitely make me do a double take too, and oh wow, what an experience! What an experience! So, okay, well, let's segue over into the book. We've got about 15 minutes here in the first segment left, and I want to at least touch a little bit on the book that you did with Angela Smith, The Voices from the Cosmos. And how did the diplomatic work begin for you along the ET process? What was it? Was it your work with Senator Pell that got you into those circles and actually started the conversation going in a more of a diplomatic form and organized form?
Yes, Tom. You know, Tom Claiborne, as the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, very powerful and well-known internationally. And so he could open doors in every country. And I told him, I said, Senator, you know, if we're going to find out about psychic phenomena, I said, I can tell you, because I've been in intelligence, have been briefed into some programs involving psychic phenomena with U.S. intelligence. I said, but that we can't talk about. I suspect, and I said, in fact, I know from intelligence that the Soviet Union and Eastern European countries and China are seriously involved in this. Those countries I need to go to and meet. He said, let's do it. And so he opened the doors. The first trip I made to then the Soviet Union, I visited 2 of their research labs that were labeled in consciousness research. They used that term too. They had their own in-house psychics. I met them. And in the first visit to Moscow, the director of the lab said that he would like to share details, anticipating that I would have information to share with him. They were disappointed because the only thing I could share with him was in the public domain, and that sort of put a blanket over that. But they realized I was telling the truth, and I would not violate any confidences that I had legally entered into. And so they just sort of sighed and opened the books. And the briefings that their engineers and their scientists gave me, each of them came in with a book from less than a half inch to an inch thick, and laid it down on the director's desk. I don't read Russian, but I'm sure that the markings that I saw on the covers indicated a classification. And then I had hired a technical translator. But many of them, not most of them, but many of them spoke English and gave the briefing in English. The others, my translator handled them. It didn't take long before I realized that they were referring to extraterrestrials and UFO phenomena. And I turned at a break to the director and I said, I see that you have equated consciousness research, psychic phenomena, and UFOs. And he sort of shrugged like, well, of course, Figgy, don't you know? And he said, so much of what we're learning about UFOs is psychic in nature that we have to study them together. And that's what I got from the Soviet Union. And
was that the first? Excuse me. Was that the first time that this had all been brought together for you? The psychic and paranormal tied in with the UFO?
Yes. Now, you see, I knew at that time that I had been aboard the craft, but I didn't know why. I had that wonderment, and I didn't find that out for sure until Angela and I wrote the book. When the ETs told us why they had what they refer to as taking and returning, not abduction. Okay. Well, anyhow, I went to Beijing within a month of that first trip to Moscow. And again, that was opened up by Pell. There was a small internal battle in China over who would be my host, whether it would be the Army or a civilian organization known, actually it was an intelligence organization, civilian, known as hosting foreign visitors. But they got the contract and they provided the transportation and the translation that needed for me to visit the things that they opened up for me. They were less open than the Russians were. But when I told them what I learned in Russia, they felt apparently that they had matched that as closely as they could. And they did. They told me about their UFO program of the tens of thousands of engineers and scientists involved in the program throughout their country. And they were open about that. And I asked if they had retrieved crash material, and they gave me sort of a goosey answer, like we're always looking for that, or something of that nature. And they said, but we'll talk more about that in our next meeting. Well, that was a couple days later. And this is Dr. Soon, who was the leader of their UFO community. At least that was publicly known. He is a former member of the Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And he's still very active in it, incidentally. And so I asked him, I said, you know, I would like to start an exchange program between China, the United States, and the Soviet Union on this subject, because this is not a one-country issue. This is a global issue. And they said, that sounds very good. What would you like from us? I said, I would like you to be as open as you can. And they said, and what will you tell us from the United States? I said, I am sorry, but as you well know, for your own intelligence, this subject is denied and misdirected and lied about in our country. And they said, yes. So you won't have anything to share from the United States, not officially. I said, but I am patched into the best non-government researchers, and I would be glad to share that information, and they would want me to. I said, what I would like is some material from a crash site that I will have analyzed in our country, take some of it to Moscow, and see if they will reciprocate. And that's exactly what happened. We made 2 efforts in that, never could get anything from the United States, and so they disclosed the book on it, sadly.
Wow. So did China provide something to be analyzed?
Yeah, they gave me something that they said, now, we have just got this in from our field, one of our field engineers. He said it is sawdust, that was the translation that he gave, from what may have been a crash, part of a crash UFO. Then he said, but again, it may have been from the residue of a satellite that survived, didn't burn out completely. And they were always like that.
Right.
And I said, well, whatever it is, I would appreciate a sample. And they gave me an envelope. And the sawdust was looked like aluminum shavings. And that's what they turned out to be, the analysis that I had done in the States.
Wow, some interesting stuff. This is, we're actually at the top of the hour already. And,
yeah, that flew by.
Yeah, it did. Wow. I definitely want to continue on this track here that we're on right now, and because the whole exopolitical area is such an untapped area on this planet right now, and I think we're the era that we're stepping into as a collective humanity. I think we're seeing that there is becoming a dire need for something along these lines to bridge that gap, because the gap is tremendous right now between our governments and the officialdom and the general public and the truth. And I just think for the sake of sanity, number one, for all of us, we need to have something out there that is number one, that can be trusted by the people and is open with their information and can bridge that gap between not only the races here on this planet, but any races that may be visiting this planet too. So definitely in need.
Tom and Ramon, before the break, let me tell you, there has been some very new movement that I would like to share with you, that I think will be a potential bridge to the issues that you just correctly identified.
Oh,
yes,
absolutely. Please share.
Yes, please.
Well, it will take a few minutes.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah.
guys, we'll continue this on in the second hour, and we'll start off with that and at least get the names out there on the table and what they're about a little bit, and then we'll press on. All right, guys, you're listening to C.B. Scott Jones on the 100th Monkey Radio. His website is www.peaceroom.com, and he is co-author with Angela Thompson-Smith with the book Voices from the Cosmos, which is an amazing read, guys. There's some really good stuff.
Yeah.
If you're interested in exosociology and hearing from a multitude of different races, then this is definitely a fantastic resource for you. So, all right, guys, we'll see you in hour 2. Condemnation without investigation is the height of ignorance.
The love you deny is the pain you carry.
Namaste, my friend.
All the problems that divide